Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Golden Astrologer Podcast. This is Deb McBride, and I am here on Sunday, the 24th of August in the year 2025, recording this in lovely, beautiful, rainy, cloudy Escazú, Costa Rica. And lots to talk about. Lots and lots and lots to talk about. So we are in the phase of the new moon, and just because the new moon was really the wee hours of yesterday morning doesn't mean we are still not in a phase in it. Yes, we are. It lasts for a few days. So this new moon occurred at 2:07 a.m. yesterday morning, and that's Eastern Standard Time. So it was 12:07 a.m. for me on Saturday. And we were getting revved up for this new moon in a matter of days. For a few days, the sun entered Virgo Friday, 4:34 p.m. And the energy of the new moon, which opens the door to the eclipse period, as I talked all about last week, this really started to rev up a few days before. So you can feel these new moons coming in, especially when they're as important as this, and then lasting for a few days. The energy is, maybe a little chaotic or whatever when it's opening the door to the eclipse. But remember, this one was squaring Uranus and had a semi-square to Jupiter. So there was a lot of energy surrounding this. Now, the moon went void Thursday afternoon at 2:13 p.m. Eastern Time, and then finally entered Virgo Saturday at 1:24 a.m. Now, this is what's so crazy. That means the moon was void from the afternoon on Thursday until Saturday at 1:24 a.m. when it entered Virgo. That's just a lot of void. That means all Friday, a lot of Thursday, until the wee hours of Saturday morning. So, so where do I begin? So let me discuss the fact that the energy was with us for a while. And even though the new moon occurred, between Friday night and Saturday morning, or if you are in another region of the world, it would have been Saturday later in the day, in the afternoon. But this was really something. Here, it was really something. Maybe it was, Virgo, it's so regular, it's so steady, it's so earthy. Yes, but it was squaring Uranus. So the sun went into Virgo, and, it really didn't square Uranus, the sun, until today at 3:15 a.m. But this is all Eastern Time. But the moon did the same thing. I mean, it, made the semi-square to Jupiter and the square to Uranus. I felt this Thursday, and let me tell you about that. So Thursday, my friend Alejandro here wrote a book about creativity and the creative process, and we had a book launch party on Saturday evening, which was really lovely. So lots of energy, lots of people, lots of stuff, lots of things. Came home, went to bed, like all revved up from a party, And at 12:45 a.m., there was an earthquake that shook me like crazy. I woke right out of my sleep, and I sat up, and I'm like thinking, we've got to get out of the house because it was so intense. And my cat sat up, and she was like shaken out of her sleep, and she was a bit freaked out. But as soon as you come to and you get conscious and you're in your waking state and you like are sitting on the edge of the bed saying, I've got to go out, the earthquake is over. But it was something. And then Friday afternoon, about 5 p.m., earthquake again. So, and this was all before the exactitude of the new moon. So don't let anyone ever tell you that these things only have to happen at the moment they are aspecting each other, right? No. This was, I immediately, laying in bed afterwards, was like trying to calm myself down, trying to calm down my cat. She went to sleep. She was fine right after that. She just like rolled over, went back to sleep. And I was laying there for a while, and I was like, oh my God, that was freaky. And I just thought, New moon square Uranus. And technically, that wasn't happening for a little while, at least a whole 24 hours. But that was something. 12:45 a.m. Friday morning, it was a major earthquake. And then when we looked at it the next day, well, one report gave it like 3.8, and then somebody else said 4.3, which I would think that seemed bigger. But apparently, it was not very deep. And when they're not deep, they rattle more. That doesn't necessarily make sense to me, but okay, I'm not a seismologist. But the whole experience of that was just completely out of the ordinary. And, a couple of weeks ago, I think I told you lovely astro darlings that I slept through an earthquake. And then after that, I woke up and was like, whatever. And then really, I had to collect myself after this one and just get back into bed and just try to calm down and breathe and like lull myself back to sleep. But since I was already agitated, shall we say, by that, I woke up again at like 5 in the morning, 5:30 in the morning. The birds are chirping and the light is coming up, and I'm like, oh no, this is not going to do. So I, took some natural remedies and things to go back to sleep and made sure that I actually got some sleep. But I was really exhausted on Friday, and we were all exhausted because of the party planning and going out, and we were out all evening, and that was a lot. And then this earthquake, so it was something. So very powerful, very powerful. So I'm expecting a bang up kind of time during the eclipses and how we experience them, because if this is the initiation to the eclipse season, well, then there's going to be some rock and roll for sure. So, okay then. So that was the new moon for me. How was your new moon? And, it did. There was a lot of aspects. The moon, when I look at yesterday and I look in my book, I see, one aspect after another. The moon was doing its thing, squaring Uranus, in conjunct Neptune, in conjunct Pluto. So there was a yod there in the middle of the night, Saturday night, between the moon and Neptune and Pluto. And so that is something also very profound, emotionally profound. So it was quite the event, this new moon. And so we have now entered the prelude to the eclipses. The eclipse won't happen for another couple weeks. We got, I think, September 7th. So we just will now adjust to this oncoming energy. Happy new moon, everybody. So that was one thing. And let's talk about the void for a minute, because the void was very long, very, very long. And I thought, okay, this is a really long void moon. That's really crazy. And I'm starting to think about void and the whole concept of void in another respect. And why? Because I'm experiencing a lot of the void in my work, and in various capacities, shall I say. I'm in an in-between place around my work, which we can call the void. I hear a lot about the void from Dr. Joe Dispenza, of course. He talks about the void, the blackness, going into the space of the unknown and becoming no one, nobody, nowhere in no time. And that is where we create from. We create from the invisible. So when my friend wrote his book and published it, and we launched it the other day, there's a whole first chapter about the invisible and the creativity that comes from the invisible. And Dr. Joe says we create from the void, from the quantum field. We're out in the quantum field, the invisible, and there's that space that we need to go into, and that's where we can create from. And I am starting to feel that maybe our energies, maybe if we're approaching something from a very linear perspective during a void moon, like when I went someplace to try to get something done last week, 2 weeks ago, I was trying to get something repaired and the repair person wasn't there. And then I realized the moon was void. It was going to be void all day, but I had to run my errands. So I just thought, okay, whatever, I'll come back another time. That to me is your linear. I have to go from point A to point B to get this thing done. And that may not work so well in the concept of the void moon. Moon is void, of course. It's not talking to the other planets before it enters a new sign. So it was really in Leo Thursday afternoon, went void, conjunct Mercury, and that was it until the wee hours of Saturday morning in the Eastern time zone. So this is fascinating because I'm starting to wonder if void moon times are great times to create, to go into the creative mindset, to go into the place of creativity and potentially come up with other unknown possibilities that could be helpful to us in our lives. Now, I've learned lots of things about the void moon. A lot of things like, do your laundry, do your housework, business as usual. Don't go interviewing for a new job that day. Don't get married that day. Things that are, or the hours in which the moon is void. Usually it could be 2 minutes, it could be 4 hours, it could be half an hour, it could be a day and a half, which it's been. So the thing that's interesting is that if we go into the creative space, you can come up with ideas, infinite possibilities that could be potential leads into something else. So if you're sitting and doing your art or you're making creativity that day, it's a possibility that you are coming up with something new and different and innovative because you're in the space of the void. Now, I have also learned that the void is a place where we have to navigate before we go into the next thing. So if you are switching careers, if you're moving from one type of work to another, if you're in the void between jobs, or maybe like I was sort of in the void before I moved to Costa Rica. Maybe in that place you're just sort of embracing what's there, being as creative as you can, and then when the moment strikes, something new comes. And that's sort of the way the void moon works. The moon's not talking to anybody, but the moon is still moving. It's still in a sign. It's still doing things. And it makes minor aspects. It's always going to make minor aspects to planets. This is major aspects when we say the void moon. It also will aspect things in your chart. So it's a possibility that, and this is not something I've tried or experimented with, but I think it's worth looking at. It's a possibility to start using the void of moon spaces for things that we don't necessarily want results to right away, but we accomplish some things creatively and we stir the pot and stir the soup of new ideas during the void space. So this is food for thought. No one has said anything about this to me. I came up with this after listening to enough go into the blackness in my meditations and thought about how the void is the blackness. And of course, in my alchemy deck, there's the void. There's a card that's the void. There's the chaos card. There's the void card. And so it's not like nothing's happening in the void. It's like something is happening, but we just don't see it yet. It's not in the material world. It's in the void. It's in the 5D before it becomes matter, before it becomes 3D. So I can see how the void, and the more I talk, the more I'm convincing myself. I don't know if I'm convincing you, Astro Darlings, but the more I'm talking, the more I'm getting a sense of, yeah, this could really work. Like, sit down to do your creative process and see what comes out on the page during the void moon. Maybe when the moon is out of void, when it enters the next sign, then it gets more material, maybe more whatever creative juices we had flowing during the void period. We sit with it when it's not void anymore, and it suddenly it jumps out at the page on us. It comes out to us, and it's something real. It's something 3D. So I invite you, Astro Darlings, to try this, the next void moon, which is tomorrow. Tomorrow, Monday, the moon goes void on the 25th at 9:53 a.m. Eastern Time. And then the moon goes into Libra, well, at 10:08 a.m. That really doesn't give us much time, gives us barely 20 minutes of time. And then the next void after that is, the next day, 10:06 p.m. on Tuesday night. And then the moon enters Scorpio at 9:27 p.m. on Wednesday. So that means for almost 24 hours, 23 and a half hours, we've got a void moon. So try it on Wednesday. Wednesday's got, moon in Libra. But see, it opposes Chiron at 3:04 p.m. See, I consider that an aspect. So when we've got a supposed void moon, void of course moon, then perhaps it's good to go down the creative rabbit hole and just start working with things that are maybe the intangibles. After all, creativity, like my friend said in the first chapter of his book, that it's an invisible process. We're taking it from the invisible realms. So it comes from the nothingness. So I say next void moon, Wednesday, try some creative exercises and see where it gets you. And don't get frustrated. Just don't expect an outcome. Just be in process. Don't expect anything. Oh, hey, I can use this. Just let it come and pass through and get the creative juices moving and see what surfaces. Go into your intuition. Now, the other things I used to learn about the void moon is my late partner, he used to say that this was a good time to go get healed. To go to a healer, to go to an astrologer was a good time to go during the void moon. And I thought, hey, I wonder because healing is not linear. Healing is not linear. And maybe it's just a linear process that we're expecting in a void moon that doesn't work. And maybe in healing, we don't know what the outcome's going to be. We go and we see the healer or whatever, and we got to see what turns up in that session, what comes out, what emotions want to be processed. So it's a good time to process emotions. It's a good time to process creativity. So I think we can experiment with these void moons and see where they go. And that doesn't mean I'd say, hey, launch your new program on the void moon. I wouldn't necessarily do that, but it also depends on what kind of program you're launching. So indeed. So the other thing that happens this week is that Venus opposes Pluto on Wednesday at 1:54 a.m. in the Eastern time zone. So if you're in California, if you're in Pacific Northwest, it's 10:54 p.m. Tuesday night, the 26th. But on Wednesday, the 27th, Venus-Pluto opposition, and this happens once a year as long as Venus is not going retrograde opposite Pluto. And Venus is entering Leo tomorrow at 12:27 p.m. Eastern Time. And that means that she is going to now be in the feisty, juicy, creative place of Leo. And she opposes Pluto in Aquarius. So we had this last year. This happened for the first time last year because Pluto was in Aquarius at the time of year when Venus would naturally be in Leo, which is around this time of year. And this is a deep process. It is a great thing. Hey, look, if you can't do much on Wednesday because the moon is void, well, go into your creative process because Venus, Pluto is deeply creative. And, it is about triangles. So try not to get involved, fall in love, do anything on those days, like that in a triangular relationship. Maybe someone will turn up from your past. And that could be something where Venus and Pluto oppose each other and you might run into an old flame. And, I have told the Persephone myth many times on this podcast, and that is a triangular relationship. And it is also a young woman coming into her power and her true feminine power. Once she enters the underworld with Pluto and marries him, she becomes the goddess of the underworld. And, there's a time period there where it's, her mother and where is Persephone, and then she's gone off to the underworld with Pluto and she becomes a woman. She's no longer a little girl. So that is the knowledge that Pluto brings to Venus when they meet. And that is a very profound experience of deep feminine power. And before that, Venus, as she goes into Leo, will make a trine to Saturn in Aries at 8:56 p.m. Monday evening. And then she will make a trine to Neptune at 6:18 p.m. Tuesday evening. So she's in that connection to all of the outer planets, and very profoundly so. So I think this is a great time to get all those creative juices flowing and start creating something. Even if you go in your kitchen and you bake a pie, this is something profound and good to use this energy for. Just use the energy, get deep into the creativity, lose yourself in it. And that's another concept of the void, is to lose yourself in something and lose yourself in that void and become the no one, the nowhere in no time. The other thing that happens, magical aspect this week, is the 28th, Thursday, Uranus sextiles Neptune at 8:09 p.m. And 8:09 p.m. in the Eastern time zone, 5:09 p.m. in the Pacific time zone. Maybe it will be in the middle of the night for you if you're in Europe. But Uranus and Neptune are magical when they get together because, and this is a very smooth flowing aspect, Uranus is like the magician, right? Neptune is the mystic. And so they create something out of nothing again. And they don't do this very often. They don't move into a major aspect with one another very often at all. So this is something special, and it helps us and encourages us to conjure up something. So I think we have a week ahead of conjuring creativity, conjuring up some creative juices in your art studio, in your garden, in your backyard, in your kitchen, in your, house if you redecorate it. It's asking us to get creative and conjure some magic, some creativity, something unknown, something we didn't expect. Uranus is about the unexpected. I got an unexpected earthquake the other night after a party. Then I thought I was going to go home and sleep a lot, No. So Uranus conjures up something that could be a surprise. And so when it works with Neptune, it's something we're pulling out of nowhere, out of the invisible realms. So I encourage you this week to conjure something up. Then we have Mercury trining Chiron on Sunday the 31st. This is the last week of August, by the way. I can't believe it. But it is... Mercury Chiron would be a very strong feeling of, unraveling some of the wounds that we have. Thinking about them through, getting insight about them, maybe doing some healing on them. Mercury trine Chiron. Maybe you are a healer and you are working on clients in the phase of that in these next days. Mercury will help us tap into whatever is happening internally with Chiron. Conjuring up healing for our wounds. So there's another conjuring. And this is the last week of August. And next Sunday when we meet again, we will be on the last day of August. And Monday is the 1st of September, a week from tomorrow. And that is when Saturn goes back into Pisces, 4:07 a.m. So Saturn has been going retrograde. It had stepped into Aries. Neptune's not ready to go back into Pisces yet, but Saturn is. So Saturn will be going first because Saturn has spent less time in the new sign of Aries than Neptune has. So we'll talk about that Saturn at 29 Pisces when we get to next week on next week's podcast. I have to give a plug for my Reiki. So I have some stories to tell you. I do this 5D Reiki. So before things are brought into the 3D, they are created in the 5D, which is what we're talking a lot about this week, right? So the void, the space, and my Reiki is really wonderful. And it really does help people deeply with their lives, like clear up obstacles, clear up emotional stuff. It's a very healing process, to go through it. It's not just I'm putting my hands on you. I'm not putting my hands on you at all. This Reiki happens remotely. And when I am in the room with someone doing Reiki, I don't put my hands on them either. They sit on one side of the room, I sit on the other side of the room. And so I go into the 5D and do the creative work there in order for it to manifest in the 3D. And that's really how things manifest. So if you want to manifest something, you got to go into the 5D, which is what we want to do this week as we're conjuring and making magic in the space of the void, right? So that is what I did last week. So I did it for some very mundane things, okay? But it worked. But this proves everything. You got to go into the 5D to get it to happen in the 3D. I could have struggled in the 3D, but I chose not to. So I had a package that was coming from Canada and has to go to my space in Florida. Well, my address in Florida where they bring it, then the courier brings it to me here. And so I was trying to track it, and it was not trackable because the post office was saying, well, this is a Canadian tracking number and we can't do that, even though they did that last time that I ordered from this place. Exasperation. So what was I going to do? They didn't give me an expected arrival date like they did the time before. None of this was I just did this. So there wasn't Mercury retrograde. So I'm thinking, what do I do? Okay, I'm going to Reiki the package. So I Reiki'd the package. I did my Reiki routine that I have to do and the whole process on the package. And it took, a few minutes, right? Because it's just a package. I'm not working on a person. I'm working on a package. The next morning I got up was Tuesday and I got an immediate email. Your package is out for delivery. Meanwhile, I had gotten no sense of where it was. I had been looking, seeing, finding. It was sort of stuck in the tracking. Boom. There it was. Okay. Then I said, okay, great. That worked. That worked very well. Now, I got a new refrigerator. My landlady bought me a new refrigerator. Giselle got me a new refrigerator because the old one was very old and it was, not looking good anymore. It functioned, but it wasn't looking good. And it was last Saturday that the refrigerator was delivered, not yesterday, last Saturday, the one before. And I was told something I'd never heard of before, which is the refrigerator needs to stand upright before you plug it in and start using it. Well, that didn't happen in New York when I replaced my refrigerator. So I thought this was strange. And I'm like, okay. And that means Saturday I could not install the new refrigerator and take out the old one. But they decided that the guy that comes to do repairs here, his name is Ronald. I think I've mentioned him before because he was working on my roof last October. And Ronald was going to come and install the refrigerator. And I thought, all right, I'll wait for Ronald. So Ronald was going to come Tuesday. He was working here. So he was working in one of the other women's houses on my property. And he had a whole lot to do. He's had a whole lot to do recently. But Ronald is someone, let me tell you, if I see Ronald, I believe Ronald. When I'm told Ronald is coming Tuesday, I don't necessarily believe Ronald is coming Tuesday until I see Ronald on Tuesday. So what did I do? I said, I'm Reikiing the refrigerator. Worked on the package, right? I got up Tuesday morning. I said, I'm going to Reiki the refrigerator. So I Reiki'd the refrigerator, and I did it so that the refrigerator got in its place. I was wearing the clothes I was wearing on Tuesday to make sure it happened on Tuesday because it'd been sitting there since Saturday, and let's get over it already. And so instead of getting frustrated, which I was starting to get frustrated, I said, I'm just going to Reiki the refrigerator. And I let it go, and, that was it. I did my little Reiki. 10 minutes after I finished my little Reiki process, Giselle, my landlady, comes to my gate and says, Deborah. And I said, hello. And she says, here's some money. Can you give this to Ronald? And I looked at her and I said, sure. She said, I have to pay him. I have to go. But can you give this to him? He's working over there by Megu. I said, okay. And she says, how was your refrigerator? And I said, well, it's not installed yet because, oh, right, it had to wait a day. Right, but, it's not, no one's installed it. She said, well, tell Ronald to do it today. I said, okay, yeah, Monica said he was supposed to do that. Okay. But now I have Ronald's money. And she went off and I've got the money for Ronald. And so I have all the power. So I didn't Reiki myself with the power. I just Reiki'd the refrigerator. So now I have all the power. And I put the money in my back pocket and I looked for Ronald out by Megu's apartment. And she's like, no, he's not here. He's coming back at noon. So I texted Ronald And I said, hey, Ronald, I have, and he does speak some English. I have your money from Giselle, and she said she would like you to install the refrigerator today. So when you get back and install the refrigerator, I will give you the money. I know, that's a wicked laugh, right? And he says, okay, thanks. So, you know, he was supposed to come back at noon, and he got here at like 1:30, quarter to 2. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, I'll be there in an hour. Yeah, I'll be. Okay. So he gets here, and he's like, oh, yeah, he's brought his son. And he's like, oh, yeah, okay, good. Good. He says, you have the money? I said, yes, I have the money. And so he installed the refrigerator, and he took my old one, and he said, this is great. This works. It's really good. The freezer works. And he's taking the old one back to his house. And everybody won in the end. So I could have sat here. I could have been frustrated. I could have been trying to track down Ronald, but I Reiki'd it, and it all fell into place. So if you would like a Reiki session for something minor, we can do that along with your Reiki session for something more important and vital in your life. But if you want to learn this Reiki, I teach this Reiki, and you will have this power at your fingertips as well. But you can learn to create from the field on your own. And that's what we're doing with this Reiki. We create in the 5D and watch it manifest in the 3D. And it's all different levels of how to, clear things and clear obstacles, which I did the other day. So those are just some examples of how I can use it on a day-to-day level, in addition to really working deeply with this Reiki. So that's available on my website, thegoldenastrologer.com, and you can go to my website and click book online and just set up a Reiki session. You can set up an astrology session. You can work with me on expansion mentoring, and I can help you with all sorts of tools that are in my toolbox. So I wish you a beautiful week. See me on Instagram during the week, The Golden Astrologer. Have a bright, sunny Venus-Pluto opposition, and expand yourself during the void moon. Don't just take a nap. You can take a nap. You can watch a movie. But let's try this for our creative process and see how it goes. And I will see you on the 31st of August, and in between on Instagram. Much love to everyone. Many blessings to everyone. And thank you for listening. Gratitude to all.